Alright guys, well we're back to the Defender again, and this time it's axles, because that's what she needs. This is my rear axle, and so this is going to be the easier of the two axles, because what it really needs is, well, one, it needs axle seals on that end, which is going to be super easy to do, so no big deal. And over here, well, that doesn't quite look factory. Here's a factory one that's in, reusable shape. And then I bought these from YRM Metal Solutions. And that's how hefty those are. Let's see if I can get a better view of it. Yeah, so what they originally did is they stacked washers. Even on this one, they stacked a washer to give it some sort of a thickness. But for these, they just said, no, we're just going to make them that thickness. And they just got a weld on there. That's about it. It's not going to be too bad. Oh, and the hole is the right size. Okay. So, yeah, this one, somebody obviously boogered something together to make it kind of work. And I'm sure it's fine, but which one would you want on the back of your rig? And I'm not even positive I'm going to keep these axles forever and a day. I want to upgrade to disc brakes in the rear. These are not disc brake. It's easier to replace the whole axle. I want to do Ashcroft air lockers at some point in the rear, and then a limited slip in the front, which is great, but they don't work well. This is an older axle. It's a 10 spline versus the 24 spline. We're not even going to go into that because it's a rabbit hole. Trust me, you can watch whole videos of guys talking about Defender axles and splines, and yeah, no, we ain't doing that. So what the plan is I'm going to do my best to get this thing just cleaned up a little bit. I mean, I'm just going to hit it with some rattle can paint to make it look a little bit better when I'm done. And then the first thing I'm going to do is cut this one off and grind this one clean. I'm not even going to measure this one because it's going to be symmetrical. The distance from like that part of the plane right there to there is what's really important, and the rotational orientation on that. And if they couldn't be trusted to use the right size material or do welds that didn't look like boogers, the numbers there are unimportant. So, and I'm still not 100% sold on cutting off a perfectly good mount just to weld a slightly better mount on. I don't know. I'm not sold on it. I'm going to do the first one. If it works out really good, then I'll probably do the second one, and then after that, I'll regret doing it, because that's how it works. Alright guys, please ignore the rain sounds. It is pissing out there, but one thing I'm going to do is drain the axle, which I will admit, to my shame, I did not do upon getting the vehicle, and obviously after the engine blew up, well, I wasn't going to do it then either. So let's see if there's, what it can be inside of this axle. If I can get it to flip over. Alright guys, now I got this thing set up. I got it on the hubs instead. So now I can rotate this thing around as I please, which will help a lot in the cleaning side of things. So we're going to flip this bad boy over. Okay, there we go. Let's see what's behind door number one. Is it anything? Ah. It smells like gear oil. Looks like a couple different types of gear oil, but it just looks dirty. Nothing too shameful about it. I'm astonished. I figured it'd be like, I don't know, critters coming out of there, bees maybe. One of the cool things you can see about the Defender now is if you see these bolts here, this is the carrier bearing. So what that does mean is that setting up your pinion gear and your spacing for your gears and your differential is a little easier, because you take this whole unit out on the bench, just unplug it, do your stuff, and put it back in. It also has floating axles, which means that if I take the bolts at the end off, I can slide the axles out of it too. It's in a lot of ways a lot easier to work on than a lot of other vehicles. So, but I'm not going to take that apart because it'll never seal again probably. So Just get her cleaned up a little bit and get to cutting. Oh guys, remind me when I go to put this back together again that there's no oil in the rear differential and eventually then the front differential. So hopefully I won't forget. Like I really hope I don't forget. That spring perch is totally rotted out. I didn't realize they're also at 2 different angles, so I can, there we go, I fixed it. No. Wow, that is pretty bad. Why is everything worse than I thought it would be in my wildest dreams? Why is it not ever as good as I want it to be, huh? All right, well, I'm gonna reverse track and I'm just gonna cut this off because that's what my original goal was today. And you know what? Sometimes you just gotta hit your goals, even if they're stupid. Well, I got some of that off, but it's taken a long time and they put real big, you know, if you can't weld good, weld a lot. We're gonna use the old torch. All right. There we go. There we go. We'll see how bad this works out, but I think it'll be all right. That's just more of that lovely Z-bark coating. I think, maybe. Well, now she's gone. All right, guys, so there it is, all cleaned up, ready to go. The torch was the right tool for the job, and then a heavy angle grinder. So the only question is, how do I line that one up this sort of way with that one? And what I think I'm gonna do is, hopefully you can see that, I'm gonna put this arm, and I'm gonna use the same arm because I think one of mine's bent. And I'm gonna put it here, and I'm gonna find out using a big square where it hits, the tip of this hits the ground. I got a 2-foot square, so that'll work, down to the ground and over to the front of that, right? So I'll put a 2-foot square on that, and then what I'll do is put the same one in the opposite side and just slide it rotationally till I get that distance right, and tack it in place, see how I like it. I think I will do this side because I have to do that bracket, the spring perch. So, yeah. I probably won't go to YRM for a spring perch. I'll probably make my own because it's just, it's pretty simple, and I think I can gin something up easier. No, who am I kidding? I'm going to go to YRM Metal Solutions and order one tonight, and it'll be here in a week or so. So even if I finish everything else first, whatever. I'll just clean it up, put it aside, and get my spring perch. But that should get me a good enough, an accurate enough measurement to get going with that. So I also am not positive, like I'm going to keep these axles, so I want to do it good enough that, you know, obviously I don't crash and burn and die. But, you know, we'll see what happens in the future. So they don't have to be, doesn't have to be perfect. This is sort of like a low stress attempt, because these axles are actually really pretty inexpensive to pick up, especially the drum brake ones. I believe this is compatible with the axles out of Discovery, which was sold in the US, so the axles are easy to get a hold of comparatively. I guess tomorrow I'll just clean the whole thing up and probably rip that perch off too, just because it's bothering me. Oh, and I gotta order, I definitely gotta order some oil seals for that side, because that is no good. And it's gotta be, it can't be the brake. No, it's not. The brake slave cylinder is brandy new, so it's gotta be the axle seals. They're not that bad to do. We'll do them, and then I'll put fresh grease in it, and I'll know that my rear axle is okay, except for one thing that also makes me think that these axles may not be long for the world, at least without major overhauling, is that's kind of a bit more slop than I want in my differential. And if anybody's really smart about Land Rovers and is asking about these, which are what hold the axles in, and they have the spline in them, these are all brand new as well. So they are not, these were very sloppy when I got it. There's a lot of splines you can replace, but this is purely axle slop. So, like I said, these axles may have done their duty, but you know, we're going to resurrect them one last time because I want to play around with them. I'm done with what I can do for this axle for now. So I'll show you, I kind of just wire wheeled it up to clean it up a little bit. I'm probably going to hit it with the pressure washer to get some of the loose stuff off. And before I paint it, I'll hit it with a wire wheel again. When you're wire wheeling, just wear, you know, wear a mask or something. It's really nasty stuff for your lungs. You'll be glad you did when you're older. I have the axle seals for this side, because obviously you can see how wet it is there. But I won't put them on until after I weld the spring perch that goes right there. So this is the first mount that I've welded on there. I did this with my Miller CP300 that I converted to run off single phase. So to those who say it can't be done, it does just fine. I mean, I'm not a great welder. You could make those welds look a lot better, but that bracket isn't going anywhere in this lifetime. So for right now, I'm going to put the wheels back on it, roll it back outside, and roll in the front axle. So the front axle, it's kind of unfortunate. This hole here and here means that I need to replace this part. To replace this part, it means I have to cut off this part and this part. The whole thing comes off. You can see these seals are weeping, the Burfield seals. I'm not going to rebuild those at this point because of reasons. But they're not leaking that badly for a Land Rover, so I'm not too worried. And wow, it didn't do any favors to my, those are my brake rotors. It did not do those any favors. The other axle had this one on, one of these on there too, and it definitely was corroded more where it was. So I don't know that I think these are good, but I'll probably put them back on. This side, this material here that holds the radius arm is fine. You can see that this is kind of roached out here, but it's just, they make one axle for left and right hand drive, so there's nothing actually that bolts here. It's just this side that bolts in to a, you know, for the, the left-right motion. I don't know, sway bar? We'll call it, it's not the sway bar. I don't know why I can't come up with the name of it, but anyways, there isn't another one of these for this side. Nothing bolts in here. So what I'm just going to do is cut this back and plate it over, and it'll be fine. So the other mount being under here is just fine. You know, none of this is great. I also definitely need a steering stabilizer because I can push it in by hand, and then not a lot happens. If I come back 3 days later, it'll be extended. So, you know, there's that. I'm going to roll this on into the garage and clean her up. It looks like this one's actually not as filthed up as the rear one, which does make sense. So we'll be able to put a little paint on it and it'll look halfway decent until I can decide, do I upgrade these axles? Do I replace them? Do I don't know. You know, if you guys have any good ideas, there just seems to be a lot of conflicting information on what you can do. These are the older 10 spline axles, which is the problem. So, you know, if you know the right path to upgrade, I saw one guy did it. It seemed like a, I don't know. No matter what path you take, it's expensive, right? So like, I only want to spend the money once. I don't mind spending the money, but I mind spending it 2 or 3 times to get to the right place, when the right place shouldn't be this complicated. But anyways, all right guys, I left you off a little bit abruptly, but that was just because the GoPro was acting a fool. So I did go over here and repair this. I just put a big plate over the top, and on the bottom that you can't see, I basically ground that hole out as big as it would go, and I welded it from the underside. So there is layering, but there's no pockets for crap to build up in. So this thing is all, you know, nice and pretty sturdy now. So that should last just fine. You know, this is really the structural part of it, and I can't see that it's thinned out any from original. Granted, the aftermarket one is substantially beefier. This is from YRM Metal Solutions. And it went together really well, I would say. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it. I guess this looks like it's at a little bit of an angle, but this is the bump stop, so it does not matter at all. This is right on the money, which is good, because this matters a ton. I'm going to probably open up the garage door, you know, aim it at me, and then I'm just going to go over this whole thing with a wire brush and some acetone. I've hit all this as best I can with a heavy-duty wire wheel. I went over the whole thing. Seems to do a good job. There's still definitely some crust on this, but I don't want to be too abusive with this because this doesn't feel super thick. I would say that those differential covers, they definitely did more damage than protection. So I probably will not put those back on because they just hold the moisture in. And I don't know if you can see here, it's just deep rust, which I don't like. Yeah, but without really grinding at that and potentially poking a hole through there, not much I can do, so I'm not going to. So yeah, so that's it. The axles are pretty well done now. I did finally get the piece for the other axle. I still got to weld that on, but it's just one little spring perch. It'll be no time at all. And yeah, so the whole goal today is just get these all cleaned up a little bit and wiped down with acetone and primed. And then tomorrow I'll paint them black, and then the day after that I'll assemble the entire drivetrain, which I think I was thinking Thursday I would drive this out of here, and I'm thinking it might be more of a Friday thing because I gotta bleed the clutch, I gotta bleed the brakes once I put those on. I gotta attach all the brake lines. I attach the suspension, which isn't that bad. I gotta move all this crap, you know, out of the way. I got room for it. It's fine. But hey, if I don't shoot high, you know, I'll never know the true defeat of not making it. All right, guys, here's axle number 2, fully primed, ready to just let it sit and dry. Got the new, this is the new mount welded up. Seemed to go pretty good. This is the old mount, but not the original mount that was on there, on that side. So, yeah, I can see why it rusted out on one side, though, because that is not as beefy as that by any means. So I still have the axle seals to do. I may or may not do that before I put it on the truck. I'm kind of thinking actually being able to lift it up and down would really help me out as far as getting those axle seals in, and it's not that hard to get at it. So I don't know. I don't think Thursday's going to happen, because tomorrow all I can do is paint these black and let them sit, and then clean this well. And then I can clean this area out and get all my stuff ready, but I don't know. I think I may have bitten off more. I mean, I can get the suspension on the axles, but will I have, you know, everything bled and ready to drive safely? Because, like, you know, if I don't have any brakes at all, I'm not even going to pull it out the door, you know? And if I don't have a clutch, I can't. So, you know, there's something to be said for making a video, and then there's something to be said for, you know, I've been working on this for way too long to screw it up now. But anyways, these are painted. I don't know why I painted them, really. I kind of thought about just leaving them alone because these are like the bottom of the barrel Defender axles. That's what came on it. They're perfectly adequate, but they're not great. They're not heavy duty. There's nothing awesome about them, so I don't know. But then again, I might just throw Detroit lockers in them because they're cheap and go out and rip it up. So, you know, it might be a while before these get replaced. I'll basically probably run them till I break one and then replace it. But, I mean, I love the floating axles because literally if you were on the side of the trail and you had a spare axle, 5 bolts, slide it out, slide a new one in, done. It's really that easy. Sorry I spin a lot. I'm always trying to, if I can't make out my face, I assume that you guys can't see anything either. So welder did fantastic. It really is that after rewiring the transformer, the ratios aren't exactly the same. So you kind of just have to take a piece of test material and lay down some beads with it. I also think that my feeder is not necessarily as fast as it originally was. I feel like I have to turn it up a little bit more, but you know, really small potatoes, considering that was a $500 welder and I got like $100 into converting it. You know, there's nothing else on my Facebook marketplace that can weld like that for $600, that's for sure. So anyways, yeah, so I'm gonna let these things dry off, and that one's actually mostly dry already. This stuff dries really quick, but it does say 24 hours for the next coat. So I'm just gonna give it a couple hours so I can roll them both in the garage and let them sit till tomorrow, and I'll wait at least, you know, 18 hours before recoating them. So, all right guys, well, the axles are painted. They're just a little streaky. I might do a second coat, but not till they're bolted up because they're axles. They don't need to be beautiful. And I'm gonna spray these all with that New Hampshire oil undercoating, so I'm not even sure that I needed to paint them anyways. But they've been primed well. They've got a coat of paint on them. They look a lot better. But my big problem is all this stuff here needs to go somewhere else. So I'm just gonna move everything out of the way and then set up the axles and all the mounting hardware where they're gonna end up going. And yeah, and then I can actually start putting stuff together. But until I clean up this freaking mess, it's not particularly worth it. So this is all pretty much the suspension laid out. I can't find one of my shock absorbers for the rear, but I'm sure it's somewhere. But that's fine. Yeah, so we'll just talk about the suspension real quick. It's very simple. This bar connects from there to right there, and that does the lefty-righty to it. The radius bars, which is what these are called, are hooked up to here and here. So that will do the pivot motion of the vehicle, but prevent the axle from rotating. So that's really all the degrees of constraint you need. I mean, that's a steering arm. It steers. Pretty simple on that end. It totally needs a new shock absorber for that, but that's fine. These are the shock towers. They bolt up there. I cannot find the hardware for those, but I got fancy hardware for them. These are the rear trailing arms. They attach the axle, and then they attach to the frame up here. They do the up and down, but they don't prevent rotation or side to side or anything else. They're just for forward and backwards strength. But for all the other degrees that you need to constrain, you've got this sort of wishbone suspension. So there's a mount there, and they bolt to the underside of that cross member. And then they bolt to this ball joint here. And so that will keep it from, well, that'll be the trailing arms, but that'll allow it to twist like this pretty far, but stop it from rolling the axle around. Let's see, I splashed out for some new spring purchases. My old one weren't unusable, but these are galvanized, and I'm a sucker for galvanization. Just something about that zinc. So yeah, I mean, there's some stuff to do here, but that's the major stuff that has to go on. Also, before I drive it, the emergency brake mounts to the output of the rear end of the transfer case. It's not that bad to put together, but I gotta put it together. So there's that. I have to bleed the clutch up here. I have one of those Mighty Vac things right there, air-powered vac systems. I've never tried it for this purposes. I'd like to use it for bleeding that and bleeding the brakes, which I'm also going to have to do before I drive it out of here. Install the axles. I got those. Those are right there. Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. I actually think one of these shock absorbers is up in the attic, which is, of course, real easy to get at with my staircase up and all the crap piled underneath it. But then I'll use a ladder to get to my attic because my pivoting staircase is up. I'm sorry, but but it's not going to change. So yeah, it just, well, even if all I can do is just get this to the point where I can just roll it in and out of here, that would be nice, because there's a lot of things that started to back up that I can really use the lift for. And yeah, I didn't just buy a lift for the Land Rover. Not just, but that's about it. I'm gonna start finding stuff, and then I'll just start bolting it together. I definitely don't have any of the bolts for this wishbone, for the bottom of this that goes up there, because every single one of them needed to be torch cut off. They were all completely rotted away. So progress. It's a little intimidating when you've let a project sit this long and been this ineffective at finishing it, that you might actually finish it, even though finished is a strong word. I mean, this truck will never be finished. I'm just going to keep cutting out bits of rust and welding in new pieces of metal forever. It's going to be the Defender of Theseus, but it'll be usable, which is all I really care about. So, all right, guys, I wasn't feeling overly motivated today, so I decided I would put the e-brake on, because at least that's something. And then I looked at all the parts and realized that, oh boy, do I have no clue how this particular one goes back together. But that's, it is what it is. I just wanted to show something really funny. You notice there's a little slot right there at the bottom of the I don't know, backer plate. Well, that's because this mounts there. And what this is a lovely little catch, because they know that British seals there, they're gonna leak. So they put a little weep hole there, and they put a little thing there, and they put a little drain so that you don't leak oil onto your pads. Well, as you can see by this oily surface, that, at least they thought about it, right? I mean, they put some thought into it. Yeah, points for effort. But anyways, I'm just kind of slap this together. I'll show you guys the interesting bits, but I just thought that was hilarious. Like, well, we know the seal's gonna leak, so we're gonna put a drain hole to a little piece of thing, to another thing, so that it can eventually find its way onto the ground, because England. Hey, you know what? It's a beautiful thing to know your limitations. All right, that's the brakes in. That was easier than expected. The only thing that's kind of weird is there's two little rollers that go on either side of this, so as this actuates forwards and backwards. Other than that, it's fine. It's sort of an odd design, but if you go back to 30s and 40s cars, or even earlier, having the brake be centralized was more common of a feature. And then the adjuster is here, and it's a square ordeal, so you just have to drive that in and out. It's pretty easy to set these. All in all, I think it's a decent design. I really like the way the springs are mounted. They go through the back, so you just put the springs of all four together, place it on the top, and just pull it down, and just keep one hand on there so that doesn't rock it down and take your face out. But I didn't need any special tools for it, so that's good. Then, because I got a little bit of steam left, we'll probably mount those shock towers. And I did find my fancy mounting hardware, so that'll only take a minute, and I think that's worth getting that done. All right, so this little guy here, at least for clutches, at least for this clutch, was absolutely cash money once I figured it out. So what you want to do is you want this locked, the bleed screw locked up here, and you go up top, you put your fluid in the reservoir, you come down with the vacuum on, you open up your bleed screw to a count of 5 or 6, close it, refill the reservoir, and do that about a half a dozen times. And I could tell by reaching through the floorboard and spinning the back of the transfer case with my hand, the clutch is absolutely working at this point. And I did it alone, and it really wasn't that hard. So, no, this absolutely is a worthwhile way to do it. So, the Mighty Vac, they make a whole bunch of different versions of these. I got the fanciest one because I was sick and tired of using a hand pump one for the fiance's car. All right, guys, well, I'm about ready to attempt to put the rear end on. I probably won't film me doing this because I got to drop this all the way down onto that and hook everything together, rolling around on the ground. It will not be dignified. But it should get there. I got the springs bolted on, and I then attached these to the frame and these bars to the frame as well, so I don't have to get the bolts on underneath there. They're all loose though, because I think that they need to be. I don't know. I think that it's good to have this stuff a little like loosey-goosey so that it can all kind of float to where it needs to and then slowly tighten everything down. Yeah, so my next step is I'm just going to drop it down. I'm going to regret this later, mark my words, but I decided not to put the brake line on the rear axle till after it's on the vehicle. Like I said, I will regret this, but I want you guys to know that it was a conscious bad decision. So, all right, and then I got to roll all this other crap. The idea of like laying it all out underneath the vehicle before I start was just it was a lovely idea, but had no basis in the smart way to do things. So I'll bring you guys back once I have that mostly connected, and we'll see. All right, so the suspension's all in. I did realize that I am missing the 2 bolts for this. I bought a kit of new stainless bolts, and this is actually, the 1 bolt that sticks all the way through is actually a body bolt for a corner up there that you can't see. But I have the original bolts, and I'm gonna go bring it to the hardware store and get a pair of new ones if I can't find those. Still gotta plumb the brake lines, but the way I did it was I put the axle on the ground and spun it so that these mounts were vertical. Put those in first, rolled it over, put this on, and then lifted the whole thing up. And that actually worked pretty good. And I just barely tightened anything till I got it up in the air. So I still had to tighten a little bit, but the axle is on, you know, and it's starting to feel like progress. I still got to bolt up the flex line to the frame right there. Yeah, sorry the lighting is really bad today, but we're making some progress. Then tomorrow, I gotta do the front. But now that I've done it once, it should be a lot easier, so I'm not overly concerned about that. It's just gonna take a little bit of time, but she's getting there. Yeah, so once it's put together at that point, I need to get a flex line for there, for the air intake, because mine was disintegrated. I gotta put the whole front bumper crap on. I gotta put the hood on, which is really easy. You know, just a bunch of other little things that just take up time, but it's gonna be a lot easier to come out here and get motivated when I'm like, well, you could drive it on the road, but you just have to do this. Oh yeah, I gotta put the exhaust on too. But I still think tomorrow I can drive it out here. I may not even bother putting brakes on because I've got my handbrake that works. So we'll see. All right, guys. Well, I got the front axle pretty well put together. I got that crossbar mounted. I got these on it. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to lower this on down and then try to stab those 2 in those holes there. And I don't know, it should go okay. I was kind of looking, and if any of you guys have any thoughts on like terra firma, there's a terra firma kit for this that seems pretty reasonable for like $400 with springs and shocks, and I'm kind of thinking of doing that. Just because the Old Man Emu kit is like $1,100, and I'm not sure that it's, you know, like and it has to come from, well, they both have to come from England. But anyways, I'm not sure it's like nearly 2.5 times as good. We shall see. These are like 4x4 Monroe Adventure. I don't know if this is a standard height or lifted. No real idea. I think it might be lifted, but then sagged. So, for what good that's worth. Well, it's up. It's on. The way I did it was the wrong way. Don't do it that way. I'm not sure what the right way is, but what I ended up doing was just loosening up this so that I could kind of push everything in, but oh, dirty screen. So I could push everything up in there, and it kind of worked, but I think I don't even know what the right way is. I think the right way is to put the radius arms on the car, roll the car on there, lower it down over those, and then put the radius arms on. We'll see. I'll get a chance to take it all apart again real soon when I get the right shock absorber system. So, but even though I said I wasn't going to drive without brakes, I got a parking brake, so I'm going to go steal the battery out of my boat because that's the easiest thing to do. And then I'm going to drive this out of here, and then I'm going to back it back in again because, you know, I mean, this is, yes, it's done and running, but it's not even close to done. But it's a step, and it'll be a huge motivation booster for me. Oh, you can't see me at all. But all right, guys, this is it. It's very late. It's like 8 o'clock, so I won't be driving it much. I'm just going to pull it out and pull it back in. That was probably pretty anticlimactic, but it works. Well, she moves forward, she moves backwards, she runs over the camera pretty good, which wasn't intended, but yeah, so, hey, if you like this, please subscribe. That's what this channel needs right now to grow. Likes, I guess, are good too. I don't know, algorithm. Anyways, have a great day. Next time you see this, this should be a lot closer to road driving, and we'll actually like take it out and drive around outside. I know this was a bit of a teaser, but it wasn't on purpose. It's Thursday night. I got to get the footage done by now to get the video out this weekend, and it's like 8:30, and I got to work tomorrow, so see you next week.